I was the closest.
Yeah, and it's good though, we're quite an eclectic bunch, we've all come from different parts of the country and all quite different people, and I think that's sort of our idea of this. So I was going to say thank you to Dawn and Steve, but they're down, so we'll say that after, because that's, obviously they've done this, they normally hire this place out for events and things like that, and obviously they charge, so this is more of an introductory thing, because Steve has for those of you who don't know, Steve has a sort of interest in this sort of area and wants to expand this sort of area, anything to do with the whole UFO thing, contact thing, and that's his sort of area that he's looking to expand a little bit on. So this is this is meant to be a trial event for seeing how things worked out for the whole idea of sky watching and contact and discussion of that sort of thing, as we'll see in a minute when I go through a few slides. So this was a trial event for that, so you sort of turned up as a trial group, and although we've had the schedule a bit switched around, we'll see how we go tonight and what happens and how we all get on as a group, so whether this actually goes ahead then and becomes a bigger thing, because of course CSETI in the States is quite big. They do their events, although Greer charges a lot for these sort of things. I think he's doing one over here at the moment, Stephen Greer's, sort of £3,500 a person to come and do I think it's a long weekend or a week, it's something, I don't know whether it's more, but it's a huge amount per person to do that. So I've discussed this with Steve, and he's sort of prepared to use this venue, and of course not just charge a minimum and not charge anywhere near that amount to try and get this sort of thing kicked off. There's also more groups that have started off in the UK called CEPA, C.E.5, which I forget what that stands for. So this whole idea of contacts and C.E.5, as you'll see, sort of start to take off. So we're sort of a trial. This is meant to be a trial run for that sort of thing. So because we're a mixed bunch, I know a lot of you are sort of quite up on the whole UFO, exopolitics, consciousness sort of thing, and a few people are a bit less sort of experienced. We can go around and introduce. Does everyone want to do that first? Do you want us to go and say who you are, or do you want to just carry on? Do you want to do a quick intro to say where everyone's from? Or does everyone introduce themselves?
Go for it.
Yeah, it might be more useful. Do you want to start? You can just give your name or say where you're from, and then at least everyone has an introduction, and perhaps say a bit about what your interests are. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I'll say some stuff. My name's Ladrin, if anyone doesn't know. Son of Dawn and Steve. I've been interested in the sort of the spiritual sort of path for the last over 10 years. Been doing lots of like research and certain certificates. So I'm like qualified in like paranormal investigation and parapsychology. Been a healer for a few years also, and also trance medium, and I've had some sort of ET contacts since I was very young, and I remember I was sort of hiding under my sheets in my bed when I was about 7 years old, and I could feel this being next to me in the room, and I always used to hide under the sheets, hold my breath, and like what's that? No, something's in here, because I'm quite sensitive and also do mediumship too. So the last sort of few years I've been sort of delving into sort of trance mediumship and meditation, etc., and always seeing like through my third eye sort of spirits, etc. And then years and years back I saw like an alien at the beach, and I thought, oh, there's an alien at the beach, because I saw the typical sort of eyes and everything, and later turned out to be my guide who I work with in trance. So I've done a lot of research in the UFO sort of area, especially along the lines of Billy Mayer. Have you heard of him? Yeah, I really like his stuff, his work. A lot of the conspiracy stuff, but it's more so from a parapsychology point of view, is taking on board what is actually truth and what isn't. You need to find evidence of what's actually out there. So I'm really digging this. It's really cool, and actually find some evidence or something there, rather than hearing the typical conspiracy theories, the hollow earth theory and all this other stuff. It's like it's good to actually find some scientific sort of knowledge and evidence to put against, not against, but for this. So we can share this and spread this and get more people involved. So yeah, enjoy learning a lot more from all of you and this event. So
thank you.
Well,
that's it really. I'll just say, so yes, I'm David. Interested in shamanism, and then moved that into sort of the UFO field and black budgets, that sort of thing, and then set up the UK Exopolitics Initiative in 2005, which has sort of grown globally. But my issue, if you know a bit what exopolitics is about the formal disclosure of the extraterrestrial presence and about its impact on a political and societal level. But within that, it tends to have, all the leaders in the field tend to have a bit of a view that this is all about pressure on the White House or number 10 Downing Street, a file release from the MOD, that sort of thing. And my big thing is to try and bring in a few more angles, especially to do with the contactee issue, an issue of personal contact from contactees and experiences, but also what we as individuals think of as an alien contact or experience, and to try and get that into the whole issue of exopolitics, because I think without it you can't just function on this one level of it's pressuring the state to sort of disclose. Disclosure takes place on many levels, including we all have personal disclosures. You know, what works on a personal level can then also work with the state, and I'm a firm believer in trying all these things from many levels, and that includes individually. And part of this process of us all meeting was to sort of empower a small group of people and to sort of give people permission, using a platform of perhaps contact and investigating contact, to perhaps get into the wider issues of what contact is, which then of course can take you to a political level. If you empower yourself personally, then you're then empowered to sort of act politically in the wider sense, or the more classical sense of what we call politics. But I, for one, don't ever believe that any politician is going to disclose anything to do with the ET presence. I think that's a complete hiding to nothing, and I think it will come from a grassroots level where it'll just be a consciousness flip, and literally things will change very rapidly, and that's part of what this is pushing on towards, these sort of events, I think. So I'll whip through these slides a little quickly. Steve's going to come, I think he comes back and say something about the whole remote viewing thing, because that fits into what we're doing. And Steve recently went to America and spent some time with Joe McMoneagle, who is one of the experts of remote viewing, but one of his specialities is remote viewing anomalous phenomena, which a lot of remote viewers don't get involved in. They do very practical targets to do with, you know, Russian bases and that sort of thing, if you know a bit about remote viewing. So Steve will come and say a bit about that, and we might try a bit of that later on. So I put that at sort of 9 PM. All we'll do, if we have a quick discussion now, go through these slides, go through what C.E.5 contact is, and then we've got some meditation to do called coherent thought sequencing, which will be me ripping off Greer's stuff, and we can play it in the roundhouse. And then around about 10 PM, if we haven't got too much cloud, because all this is weather dependent. Although Bridget made a good point when I spoke to her on the phone, of course, that contact can take place in any shape or form, and contact doesn't have to be a saucer coming over in the sky, and that's classically how we see sort of contact taking place. You know, if you've got close encounters, it's saucers coming from the sky, but of course it can take place, and Bridget might tell us about her experience with the gazebo as the little kid that was there that invited her to look at this gazebo, and that was a form of contact which turned out to be, it may have been a saucer, but also was many other things. And so contact takes place in many forms, and that's why I'm quite pleased that we've got such a wide variety of people here from different backgrounds, including B, who of course has had contacts, and Resh has had significant contact experience as well. So let's whiz through some of these. So most of you will know some of this, but for those that don't, it's just a quick background in basically what we're trying to do. Right, I don't know if we're going to... We've lost the bottom of my slide. I don't know. I think that's an adjustment with this, which I can't be bothered with. So, yeah, is there anybody out there? A quick point that we did a conference in 2000, I think that was 2011, and on the last... This is talking about intention and what can sort of happen with intention. And is anyone listening out there? And essentially on the last day of the events, that's been the logo since 2005-06. That's been the logo for the UK Exopolitics Initiative, which is called the Merkaba symbol. It's a hyper-dimensional physics sort of geometry, which was stole from Richard Hoagland, and although he in turn nicked it, of course. And then on the very last day, when we were all heading back from this conference, this was a weekend conference. On the very last day, there was a report on a Sunday as we were all driving back that that very shape on the last day of the conference had arrived a huge crop circle in a field, and that hasn't got the perspective on. There's several of the shots, and you'll see the size of this thing next to a juggernaut. It was huge and vast. So again, that may have been a prank by the military-industrial complex who were playing with a satellite and thought they'd zap it down into a cornfield, or it may have been some other intelligences. I don't know. But that's the whole idea of, is anyone listening, or you know, the whole idea that reality, the stuff that we're discussing is important, and it does resonate on some level, because it then gets sort of duplicated in this weird hyperdimensional way into reality, from a symbol into a cornfield.
That also happened with Greer's symbol.
I've forgotten that. I did, of course, Greer's, do you know Greer's symbol, which I have got a bit later. I've got to skip through it. Greer's symbol for CSETI, which is his group that does exactly what we're trying to do. Also right in a cornfield. I think they meditated on that. They didn't have an idea of a logo, did they, at that point? And suddenly in the field in the morning they had this logo. You'll see it in a minute, which has got the 3 balls and a triangle on. So that happened with Greer as well. So obviously something's going on. That's 2 situations which are a bit, you know, if you count the odds on something like that happening, in one out of 365 days. Okay, again, just what I mentioned about this whole idea of well, what is contact? When does contact with? We know there are. Exopolitics skips this bar. We know there are intelligent entities out there. We know that some form there is some intelligent that is sort of monitoring this planet and engaging with us on some level. That the level at which they sort of do that varies depending on whether you're a contactee or what sort of thing, or whether you spot. You're into trace cases of UFOs landing and leaving deposits on the ground. So your whole idea of what contact is changes. Again, exopolitics, the main UFO people are always, and the skeptics are all saying, they talk about the White House lawn. Ironically though, of course, they've already been to the White House because that was 1952 and that was a fleet of something or other that was flying over, if that was extraterrestrial, flying over the White House in 1952. So it's about this wider approach to contact, and we've all got our own idea of what contact is. Yeah, so the official methods represented, of course, at the moment by the citizen hearing that is on at the moment. So most of you know about the Disclosure Project that happened in 2001. Yeah, Disclosure Project. So Stephen Greer, huge events that did really well and made a big impact on people for bringing military witnesses into the public sphere before the press, etc. And basically, many of them broke their security oaths and spoke about the fact that they'd retrieved alien bodies, got craft, you know, radar contacts, all this sort of stuff. And there's another one going on at the moment. So at the same time we're doing, this sort of group, and other people are out trying their contacting on this sort of grassroots individual level. Then there's a fairly big global thing going on at the Press Club again in Washington. I've yet to check in on how that's all doing. I think hopefully the videos will be out soon. I couldn't get the video stream to work. I don't know if anyone tried that. They were doing a live video stream from the hearing. So yeah, interesting point. When I was discussing this with Steve and with a few other people, and had about 60 people who wanted to come down to this event. Many people couldn't come because of the distance when they found out where it was, but a lot of the reason that we sort of shrunk it down to these numbers was because many people were just interested in the more basic form of sky watching. In other words, so you go out with your night vision stuff and you stand and you stare at the sky and you wait for something to turn up, and really the idea is that, well, you can do that virtually anywhere, and I think because we've got access to this sort of venue and things, we wanted to try something a little bit different. So spoke to a lot of people who've turned up today and basically tried to get people that were a bit more interested in doing something a bit different. And the whole idea of that is to create a series of repeatable protocols or a system. Is there something that we can do that perhaps embed some of the work that Richard was talking about with the people that he's got at his conference, the whole idea of consciousness. How can you create a system where you amplify consciousness as individuals and as a group that then sends a signal out that you want communication with these entities that are out there? And going back to the White House lawn situation, of course, many people say, well, why don't ETs show themselves on the White House lawn? Well, the fact is they've already shown up and demonstrated many things. There's all sorts of rumours out there that they've given us eco technology. They've given us new energy technology, all of which seems to be the case. And then the cabals that are literally strangulating this planet have then used that technology for themselves and kept it closeted. There are numerous examples of where that's happened, and energy, as you know, free energy inventors that have been terminated with extreme prejudice, that sort of thing. So it's trying to create a series of protocols that we can then use to sort of empower a community. Is it possible then to use this system to start this communication? Because my personal belief is now that the planet's going in a strange direction, and it's more down to us to start this communication, we have to actually ask for the contact, and until part of asking for the contact is part of the process of them actually coming down and initiating whatever that dialogue is between us and them. And until we do that, then we are going to remain in the grip of a fairly nefarious bunch of bankers, real bankers. You know, so it's perhaps trying to subvert that whole mechanism that the state, globalists, whatever term you want to use, trying to subvert that a bit by going underneath and creating a direct link to these intelligences that are undoubtedly out there. And that, you know, can we create a series of something that's repeatable that we can take from group to group and perhaps empower people on a local level. So yeah, I thought that I even mentioned UFO community programming, because well, within the UFO community you've got ideas, of course, of what, you know, what contact should be, what communication should be. Should you even be trying to communicate at all? Should you just be putting marks on a blackboard about how many UFOs are spotted? You know, everyone's got their own idea of that, and I think this whole idea of night vision. I think we go on to that in a minute. The whole idea of the night vision thing is that you've got a process by which you shortcut all of this stuff, all of this noise to do with what contact is. The whole night vision thing, to me, you shortcut that because you have a direct connection in one way by viewing that object. You have a direct connection to these entities, and the communication, of course, comes after. If you've spotted something, you can start some form of communication with it. So the scale, I mean, people will have heard, of course, of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, because, of course, that's based on the film. But this was actually, yeah, we're cutting things off here. This is at the top. The title was this is the Allen Hynek scale. So Allen Hynek was a researcher from the sort of 60s, 50s, and 60s, and he developed this scale. Stephen Greer claims he added the C.E.5 on, but I don't think it is. Someone else, I'm pretty sure, there's a guy called Richard Haynes wrote a book, I think before Greer bought this, but Greer's adopted this term. Stephen Greer is the guy that did the Disclosure Project, and also CSETI, which we're basing some of this sort of experience on at the moment. So you can see the list there, they're just forms of contact. And the fifth one is important because, of course, it suddenly shifts everything from this contact where sort of UFOs are at the centre to it's a human-initiated contact. So it's the whole idea that you use various bits of technology and your own consciousness to beckon in or vector these ET craft and these entities into some sort of communication. Even I want everyone to try and read this in the space we've got after here. This is the CSETI Working Group Manual, and you know, as much as you can take this as some sort of example of what to do and not to be taken too literally, then this will even tell you the idea of what to do if a craft lands, how to approach that sort of thing. And some of that's based on Greer's experience. They have had stuff happen that is based on Greer's experience. It's just he's quite strict about who can do that. He's got his whole hierarchy of ambassadors and who should go forward and stuff. So it's pretty convoluted, but that is certainly worth a read as regards what could happen and what possible avenues you can take. So yeah, we've mentioned contact can take many forms. All right, okay. There's the. I don't know if I can move this, shrink this screen. That's the CSETI logo. So that's the one that appeared in a crop circle. That was in Britain, wasn't it? So there were again crop circle land over here. That was over here. That's James Gilliland's ECETI, another version of that goes from Trout Lake in Washington, and they have tremendous results with stuff that they do, and their contact is a bit less structured than Greer's. Their sort of method for that. They're basically near a huge trout lake, near a huge mountain, which seems to be some sort of UFO base. You can go on YouTube and you can see the stuff that happens at the ranch there, but they have regular contact with these discs that literally flash. They're called power-ups.
Yeah, it's Oregon.
Is it Washington? Yeah.
Near Washington.
Washington, yeah, Washington State, yeah. This Trout Lake it's called, I think. I don't know whether Mount Rainier, I think. Is it Mount Rainier?
You got Mount Shasta, Mount Adams, actually.
Mount Adams, right. It's Adams, yeah.
Been there.
Oh, right, oh, yeah. And it seems that Mount Adams is some sort of base for this thing.
It glows. It glows.
Right.
Literally, green glows.
The mountain glows?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I've seen some things not come out of Mount Adams, away from Mount Adams. Yeah, it is amazing there.
I'd love to go. I can't go to the USA, but I'd love to go over and see that because I've seen craft. seem to apparently disappear into the mountain. But on top of that, on the C.E.5 level, the craft then come over where it gets... How many people were there when you went there? Because it seems like 100 people a weekend there at the moment.
No, I think there was about 4 of us.
Oh right, depends when
we've
that
got a lot of workers that work there.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Right.
We've got obviously Mount Shasta, which is very close, and obviously that's where a lot of people remote view. Right. And that's a lot of ET stuff there. But you know, in the line of 3 as you're flying over, you can see all 3 of them coming out of the clouds, the mountains. It's lovely. And
did you have an? Because they do this communication that if you flash.
I had an experience there, yeah.
Yeah, but this whole idea that they will flash and pulsate according. So if you do 3 flashes with a laser or a powerful flashlight, you'll get three pulses back. Yeah. Oh, right. So you can get some sort of direct contact as well, some sort of feeling or mind contact. All of which is the same sort of thing. Is that what you're saying?
It is. Yeah. Didn't need any of the lights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but that's where it's all, isn't it, different for everyone? And that's where I was interested in your experience as a contactee, because you already know what contact is like. You know, do you enter some sort of weird parallel universe? Does it feel any different? So most of us don't sort of know that, and it's trying to find out, well, how do we take an experience like yours and sort of build it into the group, and so you can help other people discover, is there a set feeling to that? Is there some sort of voice in your head that happens when that sort of takes over? So that's all the sort of thing and you're saying that's the sort of thing that happened at James.
Yeah, James, what do you want me to say? What
happened?
James had gone in, right, it's called the Field of Dreams, basically. You've got Mount Adams in front of you. And it's a lovely sort of communal place, lots of people working there over the summertime. And I went with my ex-partner Lauren, and basically we're in the Field of Dreams, and it was in the early part of the evening. James had just gone off to go and do his radio interview. And one of the workers had come up and said, you know, this is where people see a lot of orbs and things and can have communication, and they do have the lights and everything. And I chose not to use anything like that, obviously, because intentionally they know and I know that we're all there for a reason. Wherever you could be, you can, you know, go to the supermarket, you can ask for something, can't you? And boom, that's where you find something. And we were outside, sitting outside, and then you've got the Mount Adams in front of us. And like I said to you, it was what we saw, what reminded me of like green crystals. Sort of like a Moldavite green, you know, just sparkling, just blinking. You'd think, like, you see things like that come from, did I just see that? Wow. Because no one could walk up to there, no one could get a car up there or anything. And then, you know, you carry on talking and it catches you again. And that's where people are saying that it's like a gateway of energy can go in and out. And so, busy talking, and then all of a sudden, where you've got Mount Adams, all of a sudden to the side of it, to the right side, just this big, massive orange orb just totally appeared, huge, right next to it. And I'm like, and then it starts moving. It's moving in a straight line, and then intuitively I said, see that star over there? It's going to go into that star over there. And then you're thinking, then you doubt, you're doubting yourself, but you got to go by the first thing you said, because you're generally kind of right. And going in a straight line, you just went to that star, and you just blinked, went to the star, like on top, piggybacked on top of it, and just boom, out. It's like, what? Okay, that's clever, that's spooky, you know, all the stars that you see out there. And then no sooner we said that again, I said, it's going to be another one. And in the same place where the first orange one was, just went again, and I said, he's going to go back into the other one. He went straight in where the other star was, and one of the workers was there with us out there, and he went, never seen anything like that. In all of the things that they had seen, he said that was absolutely remarkable. You know, and it was, because that experience was different yet again to all of the others. So to me, it's another learning experience. When I look at the stars now, I just think, oh, you know, they are very, very clever up there, what they can do. So yeah, ECETI lunch club, totally safe for anybody to go there. I mean, but you can go anywhere. You can go anywhere. But that was great.
Well, I mean, that's the interesting thing. Is like, is the because you know, we talk about things that are also on ley lines, that UFOs seem to like energy lines of around the globe. So is it we could find this out by probably doing a couple of weekends here. So is how much does human consciousness acting as an attractor actually work for this sort of thing? So because the Mount Adams area is known, has been known as, like Mount Shasta, has been known for these
Oregon
discs.
itself. I mean,
Yeah.
you've got a huge. I'm heavily into Bigfoot. You've got huge Sasquatch, you know, people that have witnessed. So it's no different than seeing, you know, a UFO, experiencer. Well, they're Bigfoot experiences. You know, heck of a lot of energy there. And I went to a military base just outside. It's McMinnville, where they have the big UFO fest every year. And I went there with what I call Bigfoot Andy and Lauren again, and in the woods, and they have a lot of military training in the woods, and blackberry picking we were, picking the blackberries, eating the blackberries, quite happy as Larry's, and all of a sudden this all just came over our head and just flew, and I was like, okay. It's like a drone type of thing, and then we saw 2 or 3 of them, and then on my Facebook page I've got a picture of me and Bigfoot Andy, absolutely pickled with orbs all around us. You know, it was excellent. Yeah, Oregon's a place to go. Actually.
Yeah, I suppose it's specifically if those areas are really known for sightings. So say Mount Adams, Mount Shasta. But the point is, if say this area around us isn't particularly known for that, then can we do we prove, therefore, that consciousness can act as a magnet to invite these entities and these UFOs in by the fact that we do a couple of weekends worth of this sort of experience and this meditation, this remote viewing, this sort of thing? These protocols, it's proving that those work. Because I suppose James Gilliland could be onto a good thing that he doesn't actually need to do any of these things because these things are zipping out round about anyway. I still think that to then communicate with these things, then you would need some sort of system. You need a group of people, of course, that were interested and had the intent that they wanted to do that. But that's the thing. So Glastonbury around here, or near to here, is known for its ley lines. So I don't know what sort of things that attracts, but it's making that whole thing are there regular UFO flight paths, or can consciousness actually act as a magnet to these things? And of course, Greer would say that you vector in these things, you send your message out, he says, a few hours beforehand, you send out your vectored, you send out your vectored thought, and literally, the way he does it, he gets the whole group to literally imagine the Milky Way, then you imagine the Earth, and you zoom down, and each time you go to a deeper magnification level to the point where you zoom right in on the UK, England, and then in this case down on the southwest, and you keep sending that out, and that's what they pick up on. So again, it's whether that whole process works.
But David, isn't it? I want to say Ken Phillips, but it's not Ken Phillips. On that sort of era of people, you had down Cornwall Way. What's his name? He did basically have a timetable of when you could see UFOs.
Who's that? Because that's interesting. Because there's Alan T. Greenfield does that. So there's another guy called Bruce Cathay does that. Who's called?
He's really old school.
Yeah, the French guy.
Sorry.
The French guy.
No.
Yeah.
I'll have to go back and look at home. He used to be a very good friend of Kev Phillips. He used to run Bufora, and he was at there was DVDs for sale on him at your conference a couple of years ago, and I was amazed that he was still doing it. I'd have to think of the name, but that's what he does. He basically has worked out timelines of windows when you do see them.
Right. The Kevin guy you just mentioned is from
Ken Phillips.
Ken Phillips?
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay. So
Ken Phillips used to run Bufora.
Before, right, okay.
So a bit like a weather report.
Kind of was. Yeah.
The frequency, Tuesday night's the best night.
As bizarre as that sounds.
As bizarre as it sounds, and Wednesday night's the worst.
Well, I'll go back to my sightings and have a look and do the same.
So this is from this document. So I just whittled down these views. I'm going to read these out, and this is the sort of thing you should be, I suppose, thinking about tonight, because this is all about the whole word is, of course, intention, and intention over expectation. So it's sort of not letting expectation that you will see something rule over your intention it's sort of that whole idea of having some which is quite hard for us as egotistical human beings, to have some sort of purity of thought as regards this whole thing. Especially, I'll point out, if you, of course, listen to the whole thing about grey ETs abducting and doing various things sexually with people, all this sort of stuff that you've heard about ETs, that a lot of which seems to be military disinformation. You know, if you go back to the 50s and 60s, none of this was going on. It was all very much human-like ETs that were having contact, and that's changed very much in the 80s. When Whitley Strieber, of course, came out with his book, then things changed rapidly, and so it's quite hard for us to have this sort of thing, but I think you can shove all that thing to a side for a moment and try and have this, you try and get to this attitude of having some sort of intention that's not fear-based, to try and get this thing moving. This is the CSETI having sort of reduced. I reduced this down to their, and from their sort of introduction to their working group protocols. So this project is a scientific, diplomatic, and humanitarian endeavour, and requires a non-prejudiced view towards any and all extraterrestrial peoples visiting the Earth. These efforts are expended on behalf of all conscious, intelligent people throughout the universe. Unity amongst the group, that's quite important. Ongoing development of freedom from fear and prejudice, unity of purpose and action, peaceful and altruistic intentions, and the realisation of oneness of mind and intrinsic unity of all people. These are sort of basic universal values, you know. These qualities constitute the foundation of the C.E.5 initiative, and are the it's quite important, that are the prerequisites of success. This is all quite basic stuff. If you look sort of natural law, universal law, go read Alfred Weber's book, who wrote the first book on sort of exopolitics. It's all this sort of stuff, and these are just basics. As a planet, we're stuck into quagmires of war and these sort of representations of ego battles that go on the planet. But you know, if you take this off-planet, whole anti-gravity quantum sort of look at things, then all this sort of makes sense and is fairly obvious. WG means this, it's a working group document. The working group coordinator, in a spirit of consultation and with goals of consensus, coordinates the working group, and in the event of a confirmed contact, provides cohesion and leadership for the group. All protocols which here follow are performed with the above ideals and principles incorporated into these protocols. This is quite an important bit. It is certain that the spirit of the group, its intentions, motivations and unity is the foundation for contact with extraterrestrial intelligence, and transcends any specific protocols, important as they may be. And I thought that was a really important point. So, you know, we can do all the work that we want, we can read all the bump we want from groups that have had success with this sort of stuff, but ultimately it's sort of the group cohesion and the intent of what we want that works out. And this sort of stuff doesn't matter. This sort of stuff's a template, because we don't know, none of us know what we're doing. No one's got the monopoly on ET contact or how to do it. You know, people are sort of trying and putting ideas out there. So again, it's how do you take the experience that a contactee or experiencer has to then build that into a group scenario. What would you do if a saucer landed or some entities appeared physically or dimensionally in front of you? How would you react? You know, are we prepared for that? Is there anything in here or any document that we could produce that could prepare you for that? And the answer is there isn't. You won't know until it happens, but it has. You know, it has happened to people. I've met people that have been on CSETI. I've met 2 or 3 people that have been on CSETI that I think are really honest people. I don't know if I totally believe if Greer told me he had some sort of contact, because he's quite a PR sort of, you know, he certainly knows how to do his own PR. But I've met people that have been on CSETI expeditions, and they swear that they've had really quite profound stuff happen. So it's, you know, it is a possibility. So that's the working group protocols. That's the document. If you want to have a read of that, there's enough time to do that. One reason why we chose this venue, or why when I first spoke to Steve and we discussed all this, is because Steve's background, he's been over and done the whole thing, the Monroe Institute test. This is the HemiSync stuff that Evelyn asked the name of. And Bob Monroe basically found a way of using it's slightly offset sounds that go on via headphones that trigger you into certain spaces, and it actually gets quite a strong and profound thing, especially if you play them sort of at night. You know, you've got the right, if you've got a really good quality headphones and stuff, because it's all based on frequency. So, as you may have known if you've looked around your rooms, this venue is set up for HemiSync insofar as each room has a piped-in set of headphones where I think everyone then could be on the same, you know, Hemisync functions on these different levels of recording. They go all the way up to sort of, is it 33?
It's a gateway experience.
Yeah.
It starts off with, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Steve's got all this sort of stuff. So you basically choose, you go through these levels, and you know, until you feel comfortable. And one of which is contact with, one's called contact with beings, I think, and there's various other things. There's things like soul retrieval. It gets quite weird. But if you want to try that out, you can speak to Steve and do that. The point is that we have this idea that, as well, if we're, instead of just a sky watch, then we augment, or we add on to the sky watch, we add on night vision technology. If you've got night vision technology that is now becoming quite widespread, you can pick up fairly cheap versions, where if you go back even 10 or 15 years, if you wanted a proper generation 2, 3 night vision scope or headset, you had to import it from Russia, you had to sneakily get it from the USA, and they were pretty expensive. There was lots of dodgy stuff that came over in the collapse of the Soviet Union and the Berlin Wall and stuff. The military sold loads of stuff, so there was a glut of stuff came over then, and much of that has filtered out into the market as well, and is being used for this sort of purpose.
How much does the stuff cost now? Just interesting.
Years ago, it's probably about 600, 700, 800 quid for a pair, and now you can probably pick up even a second-hand pair for like 300. A decent, really decent, because obviously it's due to the lenses on them. And yeah, you can pick up half decent.
It's more the tubes that you pay for. So you've basically got two sorts of night vision now. You've got a digital stuff that's come around much more recently that uses computer circuitry to takes the photons that are coming from the night sky, infrared, and it basically gives you a digital representation of that. So it converts the light, converts the photons into a digital representation, just like your computer does, puts it onto a screen. And I tried one last night, and you can sort of tell that compared to the previous, which is the tube generation. So so the original ones, yeah, you can pay anything, to be honest, now, because the tube technology has rapidly got better. So you can second-hand, you probably pay a bit more than the Bridget said. You can get the digital ones for sort of 300 or 400 quid, but if you want the traditional tube technology, then you know you're talking probably about £2,000 for a decent set of night goggles with the generation tubes. You've got to watch though. If you buy second hand, you have to watch, because for UFO sky watching, which interestingly, me and Steve went to Birmingham to see the biggest distributor of night vision technology that's in the UK, Cobra Optics, and they have huge. They used to actually advertise in UFO magazine, Graham Burr's back in Graham Burr, and he said so they have as much business now from people doing this sort of thing. There's loads more people doing this than actually you know about.
Do you know Kim Carlsberg's now got a place in Arizona, Skywatch?
She does her own Skywatch thing, yeah. So she probably knows a bit about the technology is actually quite a minefield. So when you to try and work your way through what the best technology is for what purpose. The one clue is, if you want to get some, is if you're going to get the non-digital sort, make sure you check the tubes out first, because the tubes are actually coated in a special UV paint which the photons bounce off. And if you have one black mark, it's one where it's been manufactured, you can get these black spots. They're called black spots, and a lot of the Russian stuff came over, and when the Berlin Wall fell down, had these sort of degraded black spots in. And of course, if you're looking at a night sky, you need a perfect sort of resolution, and you need not. If you see these black spots, you're going to mistake it for something else, so you have to be a bit careful. If anyone's interested in getting some, I can help you a bit, guide you into what sort of things to get. But so coming back to the point with this venue, the whole idea, if we're going to add night vision technology on, that's already sort of shortcutting this whole process of contact, because you no longer have to stand and stare in a field. If you spot something, you can get it on, you can get it recorded with your night vision equipment, and you can even zoom some of the equipment. You can even zoom in a little bit closer and start to see the outline of whatever you're looking at, so you can tell if it's a satellite or a plane or it's something a bit more strange. Then the whole idea was, well, how do we also sort of expand consciousness? So part of the process of contact, of course, isn't just the technology, it's also expanding consciousness. And of course, the Monroe Institute and Hemisync is all about that. It's about shifting your consciousness into a different space so you become receptive to this whole thing. The other technology, which some of you have tried here, or most of you have tried, is the Lucia light system, which, of course, I think most of you will agree. Have you tried it, Richard? Oh, you all right? Resh tried it. You should yet to try it. I'm interested to know what you both think to that, and how that relates to putting you into a receptive sort of state for doing what we're trying to do. So the main point was to use the technology that's here already and how to put that on top of the whole issue of contact. And this is just a trial. We don't know whether any of that's going to work. It's the whole idea of trying to put this additional consciousness changing technology on top, as well as meditation, as well as remote viewing, and add these other things like Hemisync and the Lucia light system. I think the Lucia light system is hugely powerful, so I think it's an amazing bit of kit. If you put that on top, is that going to increase your propensity for spotting craft and or having other anomalous things happen and take place? So that was the main idea of merging the two things to do with the Skywatch and the technology that's here. Okay. Puts the I made the point again about should if there are entities out there and intelligences, the point is what are the things that we do going to make? Is it going to matter with how we try and communicate? What sort of methods we use to communicate? And I wanted to make the point that there's actually several cases within the UFO contactee literature where we've just done an introduction, Steve, so we're a bit behind on all this.
Right.
I'll make a point where actually in the contactee literature you'll find many cases where, because people think, well, is this some relationship where these craft, these UFOs are just simply flying around and not really taking much notice of us down here, and they're here for their own reasons, doing whatever they're doing. But actually they're acutely interested in us as a species. And you'll find many cases, both in the Billy Meyer literature. This is a case of Bob Renault, who was a guy from the 60s that not many people have heard of, but has some fascinating stuff. Both these cases sort of mirror each other in the fact that the ETs make a point of saying that they're monitoring our consciousness. So they come down, they do various tests to monitor consciousness, to check the evolution of us as a species, and they, you constantly find, especially in the Bob Renault case, that they're constantly trying to influence us using their own technology towards having certain dreams to do with encouraging contact, all this sort of thing. So it seems that indeed the ETs are listening and out there and more or less waiting for us to make the move as far as initiating some sort of communication. One thing is this, I wanted to see if Bridget would speak a bit more about that, but this whole idea that when contact takes place, what sort of thing happens, and again, when you go into the CSETI documentation, you find that there's this discussion of locked-on contact. So when some engagement takes place between you performing your CSETI, C.E.5, Skywatch, and these entities, what sort of shift takes place in us? It's not just is there a verbal communication? Is there a different voice in your head? Is it just a feeling? And these are all other things to pay attention to as well. So the shift, from what we've seen so far, the shift into this level of communication, I've made some points here that basically, that was quite an interesting one, and this links into some of the remote viewing stuff that we've been looking into. That a shift is required in how we see the whole idea of communication. So really, again, it's not this straight dialogue as we know. There's going to be some shift, and if you start looking into the whole idea of ETs and telepathy, when contactees are addressed, and you find these dialogues that happen between entities and human beings, then they all describe. If you look at Jim Sparks' case, there's a huge amount of stuff between. It's not just a normal form of communication. So in the case of a saucer turning up and then some sort of contact or lock-on, as they describe it, happening, how does that manifest itself? And the idea that we, as sort of humans that are sort of embedded in ego, have to shift to perhaps some other way of doing things, and we need things like the technology. So just the Lucia light system or the Hemisync or meditation, all these things can put you into a sort of different mindset to facilitate this communication taking place. And Ingo Swann said that, this is Ingo Swann's the guy who did started off most of the remote viewing stuff and did some fascinating stuff with remote viewing, but made a point that the human mind takes in only 40 million bits per second. Sorry, the human mind takes in 14 million bits per second of information, which only 16 are conscious mind. I don't know where he got that from. I would think it's even less than that, but he must have got that from somewhere. He works with a lot of very high-up scientists on the remote viewing stuff. So this method of communication, these methods like remote viewing, are how to slip into that other side where you've got the majority of unconscious or non-local, as quantum physicists call it, how to slip into that and to see a wider spectrum of reality, which is what this is what the stuff that meditation, drugs, all these sort of things can do when you shift from the sort of normal reality. Aldous Huxley discussed this whole idea of filtering. He worked with LSD in the sort of 50s and basically found that the mind had a filter that was enacting. So this is the sort of thing we're trying to deal with to facilitate and amplify this whole idea of sending consciousness out there and conscious intent out there. I mentioned the Stan Romanek case. What's fascinating about that is that he literally makes a point that at certain points there are, for non-local communication across the galaxy, in his case, with this federation of ETs that he seems to be in touch with, then there's an element of universal timing to it. So it seems that the planets, certain things have to be in alignment. Some sort of alignment has to take place on this quantum super level for communication to take place. And if you look into his case, they even go so far as to phone him up on the phone and make this point. It's quite a fascinating case if you look into that and all the issues about how they go to arrange contact, which will sort of fit into a lot of the stuff we're trying to do here. The whole non-local thing also fits into the fact that the military are meant to have invented a non-local space phone, which can basically communicate over any distance, and it's instantaneous.
And that's Skype.
Skype's getting there.
Cosmic Skype.
Yeah, cosmic. Well, Skype's getting close to being like that.
Based on gravity waves.
Is that what it uses? Right. Okay, so that's it. That's the point. So it's how to switch again from this idea of the individual to the group consciousness, and to maintain or amplify that whole idea of intent, which involves this switch to this quantum sort of level. Quantum's an overused term. It's on the internet all the time. People use it, but that basically means that non-local level where we're all connected. If you look back to the 1920s, when they first started doing all the experiments with the atoms and stuff, you find that actually when they tested two atoms or photons, was it at a distance, that both of them retained an element of communication between themselves, and that's basically the sort of area that we're trying to head with this communication. Steve is going to say a bit more about this because, like I said, he went over and spoke with Joe McMonagle, who has done a lot of stuff on UFOs and remote viewing. But interestingly, remote viewing, it's how we try, this is what we've sort of struggled with for a bit here, because how do you fit remote viewing, which is usually about a definite target. So with remote viewing, they usually give you like coordinates, or they describe something. They have these blind tests where the remote viewer doesn't quite know what it is. The Eiffel Tower, it's a Russian base somewhere. The difference is, of course, we haven't got a definitive object to view. If you're trying to remote view, anomalous objects that are out there, as in saucers, people have done this, saucers or craft that are out there. Courtney Brown, has done that sort of thing. Then how do you validate anomalous data? That's the interesting thing with that. And how do you fit the remote viewing protocols into analysing or getting benefit from the whole remote viewing process when you're doing things that's meant to be anomalous? So you haven't got any real backup to it. You can't go and validate it like you can at a Russian missile base or the Eiffel Tower. So yeah, that's what you've got, intended and verifiable targets. They use a process of blind and double-blind experiments, which you'll see how those sort of fit in. Though the whole idea of that is more to do with the strict remote viewing than perhaps what we'll try and do a little bit later. And there we go, off-planet anomalous targets. A classic case is, of course, that I suppose you've got cameras that can go up and validate that, but when the face on Mars first came round and NASA wouldn't send round, there's a whole argument because NASA wouldn't send another camera round to retake it, or when they did, they came back with some smudgy image and said, oh, that's it, it's a pile of rocks. So they sent remote viewers out to basically say, well, what was the face on Mars? And of course, again, if NASA won't send another surveyor up, how do you then validate what the remote viewers found? If the remote viewer come back and said, yeah, that is definitely a face, then how do you validate that? But that's some of the uses.
But the whole point of remote viewing, you've got various different people doing it in different locations, and they're coming up with the same thing. So, it's like to say we were all remote viewers in various parts of whatever. We knew nothing about that, and yet we're all describing or picking up certain things, exactly the same thing. So
Very much so, and the whole idea that you perhaps can get you can add additional data to something, and that's how remote viewing does it. So that's another way.
It's
like
not
say,
always photographic evidence.
no, there's many ways of doing remote viewing, but it's again when it comes to stuff that you can't always verify because you
to validate that it's like a picture, isn't it? But it's not about that.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's it, doesn't it? That was just a point to say, well, that's a slightly anomalous object because you can't verify it, but you still want to know that the practice that you're doing, like you say, if you have many people that are unconnected that come up with the same thing, that's one way of validating.
How we vector in the first place to that object, isn't it? That's the issue. How remote viewing can be applied.
Yeah, and in the whole idea with C.E.5, the idea of remote viewing comes in. I suppose it's a cross between meditation and remote viewing. So, in the experience of vectoring, using remote viewing to vector in these crafts. So, if you lock onto a craft, if you can remote view a craft and you sense some connection with it, then you use this remote viewing technique or this meditation technique to cross over to vector down these craft and bring them down to your area to get this display for the group. So if you as individuals feel some sort of contact, perhaps later tonight, then the whole idea, if you feel some sort of contact, it feels different, then can you lock that process on? Can you then vector in this craft or this object and bring it down for the group? Or ask for group support in doing that? I don't know. This is all stuff we're out there to try and find out. And again, Resh has written a bit of stuff on this, but it's trying to find a way that we can get protocols together. Because no one's really done this. Again, it's trying to find these protocols between meditation, between remote viewing, to try and find out how we can repeat this process and make a successful progress. And of course, the validation will be if someone says, I feel some sort of connection or lock on, or there's something up there, there's a craft up there that we've seen and we're going to guide it over here. That's all been done, that sort of stuff is possible, but how do we go about that, and how can we make it a sort of repeatable process to take to other groups and perhaps do ourselves again in the future. Quick other note on remote viewing, we mentioned that, does anomalous data work? Interestingly, on that point, with anomalous data, you've got Ingo Swan there, who wrote the book Penetration, who did a lot of stuff on the moon and moon bases, all of which since, I suppose, we've had people on the Disclosure Project that have come out and swear they've seen photos at NASA bases and stuff, and people know that on the backside of the moon, the dark side of the moon, there's a lot of stuff going on up there. And he wrote a fascinating book. If you can get a copy of that, I think you can download that on the internet. But it's fascinating, and he mentions he mentions ET actions going on the moon. And again, one of the first successful remote viewers who did some amazing work. The three types of remote viewing. So that's it. The unofficial military projects, Project Stargate that went on, and the Stanford Research Institute. There's Alfred Weber, who wrote the first book on exopolitics, and he was part of the Stanford Research Institute, Carter White House study. They were basically going to use remote viewing to contact ETs. That was the idea, and they got this all the way to sort of Carter White House level. Then George Bush Sr. came and shut down the process, and apparently hounded poor Alfred out of the USA. So Alfred now lives in Canada. So he claims that he was harassed by weird energy weapons and all sorts of stuff. Quite an interesting story. So remote viewing ETs has gone all the way to sort of White House level, and then was shut down. That's the point. B just mentions the Farsight Institute. That's sort of a civilian institute that also works with some military people that have worked in remote viewing, and they've done some amazing stuff on remote viewing Mars and also the future 2012, that sort of thing. So they've done a lot of stuff on that area. Also, more recently, people have started remote viewing crash retrieval sites, so well-known sites where the crashed or downed UFOs have actually gone. Then people have started actually remote viewing those and saying what they've seen has actually gone on. People have done it, of course, with Roswell or whatever else. So that's another one. And to a degree, I suppose some of that can also be validated if you then have other witnesses to say, well, Roswell has said, yeah, well, this did happen. So you can validate a little bit of that as well. Okay, hopefully turning up today. This is JLW. Hopefully turning up, because he said he would. I've got a message. On the internet since 2007 has been a guy that's he's a genius with night vision camera technology and also telescopic technology for taking astro-videography. And since 2007, he's been really annoying the Ministry of Defence and the Americans that are over here by basically taking pictures of these objects in space. These are space platforms which most people, whether astronomers in the UK or America, wherever, hadn't actually found. They knew these things were there. These are some really complex. There's numerous ones of these, and some of these morph and move. These are sort of space platforms that we think are probably launching satellites. We don't think they're vehicles as such, but there's a whole variety. These are really crap images. If you go online and type them into YouTube or just type a picture image and find some high resolution ones, you'll see video of these sort of craft up there.
Do you know how big they are?
Sorry?
Do you know how big they are?
He told me
That's got to be absolutely huge.
Miles and miles and miles.
Well, if they're repairing probably spaceships and huge satellites, they're going to be pretty big. But you can actually, there's footage of some of these things closing up and moving. And the problem is, when in 2007 he put these online, a week later they went on Jeff Rent's, which is one of the biggest websites in America for news. Within a week, I've got footage he sent me of huge Chinook helicopters, Apache gunships, coming and hovering over his house, and they were basically telling him not to put this stuff online. He got quite scared, he got followed around. So he's done that. So he then moved, you can see then, he then moved a few years later, I don't know what date that is, 2008, he moved then to doing the moon. And ironically, again, genius with how he set this up, he had ex-MOD technology on some of his scopes. It was a special way of painting the mirrors on the telescope to get this sort of footage. So he sort of moved to the moon again, but then he sort of annoyed people again because he got better footage. Ironically, at the time when he first put his moon footage up in 2008, they sent an educational satellite up for the kiddies around the world to sort of have a look at the moon and say, oh, what's the moon about? Let's have a look at the moon. But we had a look, and his resolution was way better from the planet than this satellite. They were letting, obviously, I don't believe the military or educational institute sent up a satellite that came back with poor resolution. They basically fiddled it, didn't they? So the resolution was sort of limited for what could be used by school kids and stuff. But again, he came up. He can literally zoom through craters with his stuff.
Can I ask David, how long has he been doing this? Yeah. What did you say?
2007, his first stuff went up.
And where did he get this technology?
I don't know, I should say this.
I'll let him tell us.
Well, he won't tell you. If he turns up, he's very close. He's very quiet. Basically, his scope. His first scope where he got the night vision stuff to get these from was from the MOD commissioned a separate company to create a system where from I think from from an aeroplane they could detect toxic gas over the UK. There was a certain type of nerve gas that they were trying to find over the UK, that if the UK got covered in this nerve gas, they could pick out where it was, because it had a certain light fragmentation thing. Then this sort of telescope they set up could pick out this toxic gas. That's the story that they gave him.
In itself, isn't it?
It is in a way, but this weirdly then this technology. He then begs them. Having met them, I don't know. He's very careful in what he says. He then asked them and gave them money to build him a duplicate scope with this quote MOD technology of these UV painted mirrors. And it took him 2 years. They didn't even want to give it him. He told me a whole story about how he backwards and forwards after he paid them, trying to get them. They were like, no, we can't. We want to give you your money back. And he's like, oh no, I want the scope. And eventually he gets it, and that's what took these pictures here, which astonished even Cambridge.
What was the location of these? Like in the sky? Where was?
It's still classed as low Earth orbit, which is God, you're talking. I don't know.
It's about 80 miles, isn't it?
Yeah, I've got 70. Yes, I suppose. Yeah. So you have low Earth orbit, which is just you can have satellites going even higher out than that. But
can I ask, are these different from the EMVs that have been reported? They're the ones that seem to be, gravitating around
the sun.
Saturn, the sun, and harvesting the energy. Is this a separate electromagnetic vehicle? Look at James Horrock. He's kind of.
Yeah, those are all the objects that you can see, but you don't get as clearly. I mean, that's not a good example. You'll literally see the workings of these things, and sometimes you can see the rigging of how they've been constructed.
That's another picture below it, the blue one. That's a totally different craft. Yeah,
it is. That's a different one. And actually, that one is taken from a still from one of his videos, and that's the one I think that you'll see closing up and shrinking.
It's even more because they're enormous, but then they just compress.
Yeah.
Change it.
Yeah, we did work out the size of them. I forgot. I totally forgot. I know.
It was like 20-30 miles.
I don't know. I don't know if they're that big.
Yeah, no, I remember them being absolutely huge. Just thinking, whoa.
Yeah.
And
now